Ladies and gentlemen, grab your caffeinated beverage of choice and buckle up, because today on Chaos and Caffeine, we're diving headfirst into the whirlwind of ADHD parenting with none other than the sensational Hilary Russo. Hilary isn't just any guest. She's a certified integrative nutrition holistic health coach, try saying that 2 times, certified Havening Techniques Practitioner, hypnotherapist, and an award-winning health and wellness journalist. With over 25 years of experience, Hilary has been empowering individuals to be kind to their mind, blending neuroscience with heartfelt storytelling. She's the brilliant mind behind the globally top-rated podcast, Holistically Speaking, where she shares transformative tales from trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor. Notably, her episode on ADHD solutions with Dr. Connie McReynolds has been a beacon of hope for many parents navigating the ADHD journey. So, dear listeners, prepare to be enlightened, inspired, and maybe even share a laugh or two as we welcome the incomparable Hilary Russo to the show. Hilary, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So I love a good origin story, and I would love it if you could share yours.
Oh, yeah. Which one are we talking about?
All, please.
You mean how I got into the work that I do today? I imagine that's what you're talking about. Yeah, it's a pretty fun and interesting story, and I do get asked this a lot because where I started, as many of us, does not necessarily wind up where I am now, right? So I have been a journalist for over 30 years, and with somebody who has been in the journalism field, it's very similar in many ways to those who are in the health and wellness field as far as coaches and therapists, because we are so used to hearing other people's stories and holding space for other people's stories. The difference is as a journalist, my job was to take in whatever they were sharing and then broadcast it out. The difference with what I do now, and yes, I'm still in the journalism field, but the difference of what I do now as a trauma-informed practitioner is that I hold space for people to tell their stories so they can broadcast in and do the healing within. And I think that's the big distinction. But for me, as a health journalist who was on air during 9/11, who has covered stories about COVID and the opioid crisis and pretty much everything in between, I've heard so much. When you add on top of that, I was also a daughter of a father who had a chronic illness his whole life. There was a lot that Hilary was taking in and didn't know how to process. And it came to a point where I'd always been very involved in health and wellness, and being in the broadcast field, I was also involved with a fitness show that was broadcast on all over the internet. So I was very familiar with health, wellness, holistic healing, and I just decided to take the leap of faith and say, how can I put these tools in my own hands to heal myself? What can I do for me? Because I had no clue how to deal with any of the things that I had been through when I was going through them, because much of it is secondary traumatic stress. And we think it's just burnout and overwhelm and stress that we just deal with. But how do we self-regulate it? And that's kind of what leads to what this conversation can be about. We can get into that, but that's kind of the nut and bolts of where it started and how it's kind of built to where we are today.
Yeah, that's a very interesting journey.
Yeah. Still going. Yeah. Still going.
So I believe I heard you say off camera that you were on the neurodivergent spectrum, and I'd like to hear that journey if you're willing to share.
No, I myself I'm not neurodivergent, okay, but I do hold space for those who are. Gotcha. Many of my clients are definitely, I have worked with children that are on the spectrum as far as autism, and also just, I think in this day and age, the term neurodivergent is so widely used that do people really fully understand what it is? And for me, I think about all the people that have been in my life and how many of them could potentially be neurodivergent. Yeah. And it's really about building relationships that you can meet people where they're at, just like they meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's made me a stronger practitioner, is really meeting people where what their needs are, because it's bio-individuality, as we call it in the holistic health world, that every person is different and needs to be supported in a different way. And having tools to understand that is really important.
I love that so much. I know that you said you love to work with kids. How did you get into working with children?
Well, that is something I've actually been doing for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, part of my journey is the background of also being in broadcasting. I took a break from television and broadcasting after 9/11, and my undergrad is actually in theater. I had done theater my entire life. And for that time period that I stepped away from the news anchor desk and the reporter desk, I actually built a workshops for youth program where I was offering theater programs and theater camps to kids, because a lot of times that's the first thing that is taken out of programs at schools. By the way, this was in North Carolina when I was living in Raleigh. And, I noticed that there were not a lot of programs that were offered that were financially accessible to children and families, because they can be expensive. These camps can be expensive and these workshops can be expensive. So I did a lot of philanthropic programs where I would go into the Boys and Girls Clubs, where I would go into lower income areas, or those who are impacted by social determinants, and offer these programs and do little camps. But then I also did have the higher end camps for whomever wanted their children to experience it. And I think that was really wonderful for me to be able to see, and for these children and their families too, to see these kids express themselves, because it really is about self-expression. And that was my first real taste working with children on that capacity. And then it moved into, I was a college professor for 10 years at a very well-known school in New York City, St. John's University. And I taught performing arts. Actually, I taught on-camera presentation. I taught them tools of what I do now in my practice, which we'll talk about, which is Havening. And I wanted to give them tools to help them be more confident and clear with who they are. Because standing up in front of people is a hard thing to do, whether you're on stage as a theater actor, or you are giving a presentation, or you are just being a human being is hard enough, right? So the more we give these children the tools to build a resilient landscape in the brain, to let them know that they have confidence and clarity and to calm the body, it provides a space for a much more independent and resilient adult.
Tell me if you agree with this, and then I promise we'll bring it back. Yesterday, I interviewed a neurodivergent mom, of course, but she told me that she helps people step into their truth and public speak. And I asked her why that was such a common fear in literally almost all of us. And she says she believes that it stems from self-worth. Do you agree with that?
I think it can have a lot to do with it. Our own worst bully is ourselves, quite frankly. You can be on the playground at school, but when the day is done, you can go home. But the one person you're always with is self. The limiting beliefs, the belief system we have is always with us. So, yeah, I agree that our self-worth, how we think about ourselves, is what we say to ourselves, the words we use and choose, can be a big factor, can contribute to that. I don't know if it's the only thing, because again, it goes back to each person, but our limiting beliefs are huge, and we have the ability to change our thoughts, moods, behaviors, and habits. It's the work I do in my trauma-informed practice. And when we're able to see the words that we use and choose towards ourselves and choose a new narrative, then that is where we can make a change. When we're aware of what we're saying first, because awareness is most important, then make a choice, then allow for a new possibility. It's amazing what's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I cannot believe that it took me 40 years and an outside person to say that for me to put the correlation together.
Yeah, and I think we're always battling that too, right, Danielle? Like we're always have moments where we self-doubt, where we think, "Oh gosh, why did that happen?" Or, "Oh, I'm such a fool. I did this." But when you change the words and how you say it, like if you're in a challenging situation, and I'm going to use a perfect example for women our age. We'll just talk about adults for the moment, but this happens with children too. But I think something personally for me that I always had battled was my weight, right? I'm in pretty good shape, but there's a part of Hillary that goes back to a limiting belief when I was younger, when I really struggled with, oh my gosh, I'm so heavy or I'm fat. Or we use these words towards ourselves, even if we're working out, we're not seeing results. And I'm sure there are moms out there listening that are like, oh my gosh, right. I'm perimenopause, I'm menopause. What's going on with my body? I don't look like I did. Or I just can't do it. Well, what if you change that word or those words from I can't do it to I'm making choices to be healthier, or I I can first is much more powerful than I can't, because you're sending a message to this part of your brain called the amygdala, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? That is designed to keep you alive and safe. That is its one job. We call her Amy, the amygdala. And if you're telling Amy constantly that she can't, that she stinks, that she's bad, that she's not worth it, Amy is going to do everything in her design to keep you alive and safe. And if you start creating new neural pathways and say that you can, or you're choosing to, right? That's really powerful. Choice is powerful. I choose to make a different choice. I choose to eat healthier today because I'm creating a healthier body and mind, rather than I messed up today. Those are two of the very different statements with the same goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine us doing this with children too.
Yeah.
Like reminding them when a kid says, I stink at this. How about I continue to work hard, or I choose to go back to practice, or I choose to do one more hour of this to be better at that. I make good choices. It's a very different answer with the same goal.
Yeah.
And little goals first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And when you said that you were working as a trauma-informed practitioner,
Yeah.
that brought something to mind that I am another thing that I'm learning, just to let kids know it doesn't stop after school. I'm 40 and still learning rapidly. That so much of trauma and ADHD overlap. And I did not know that until very, very recently.
And how was that for you when you learned that? How did it help you?
Well, honestly, I haven't applied it to myself yet, but I have applied it to my parents who are both on the spectrum, and it made me see them in a much more empathetic light.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with that, because the overlap could be the symptoms, the conditions, the presenting difficulties that you might have faced. And again, it's not one way. It's not just one way. Like we all deal with things differently. So yes, trauma lives in the body. I always say that even though I'm trauma informed and I work a lot in trauma, the goal is never really like get rid of it, right? Because we have big T's and little T's in our lives. The harder we try to get rid of something, if we don't succeed, we beat ourselves up, right? It goes back to that inner bully. But if we say, you know what, I am aware of this, and again, awareness is the first step to any change. I'm aware of this. I'm willing, that's the allowing. I'm willing to have a better understanding of what this is, and then I align with different techniques, different tools, different learnings. So that's what I call the triple A. It's awareness, allowing, aligning. Then I can be on the road, triple A on the road, to living a more resilient life, right? Because sometimes we don't know, and well, most of the times we don't know the end result, right? We get on the highway knowing that we want to reach point B from point A. But if we spend so much time wondering where point B is, when we're going to get there, how we're going to get there, we are really robbing ourselves of the journey between A and B. We know the exit exists, right? So why are we spending so much time ruminating about the B, the end result, rather than really enjoying the journey and just realizing that you're on the highway, you just haven't reached the exit yet, right? And that surrender and that letting go can be very cathartic and therapeutic when you know during that journey you can use your tools, you can be kind to your mind, and find that calm in the moment when things kind of seem a little bumpy on the road.
So, as a mom, as a woman with ADHD and
Mm.
anxiety who is parenting a child with ADHD and anxiety, give me all of the havening tools that you have that I can teach to him.
Sure, absolutely. So first, let's define what havening is. Your folks might not know what it is. So I am a Havening Techniques Practitioner, one of only about 1,000 in the world. I'm also a Havening trainer. There's only about 50 of us globally. And I studied directly with the co-developing doctors, Dr. Steve and Ron Rudin. I was first havened by Dr. Ron, who is a Harvard-trained internist. His brother, Steve, is a dental surgeon. Both of them developed this over 25 years ago. And when I first was introduced to it, it was like a light bulb over my head. Like, what have I been holding on to all these years? And just to give an idea of what I was havened at, it was at the 2-day workshop that I actually now have. I have one coming up this month, and I have them regularly. But this is an opportunity to learn what havening is, which is it's a transitive verb of the word haven, a safe place, right? So when I was first havened on stage by Dr. Ron, it was about the grief and loss of my father, which I held on to for 17 years, but I was not processing it. It was a trauma. I knew it was a loss, but I wasn't understanding how to process it. Havening gave me those tools to be able to disconnect it in a way of being a traumatic event that my amygdala is noticing like it's happening right now, because your amygdala doesn't know time or space. It has no clue what time or space is. If you witness or are told about a car accident, your amygdala, if you react to it, starts thinking you're the one going through it. So it's guiding to protect you. That's it, right? So it's doing its job. So havening is a psychosensory approach, meaning that it uses the sense of touch, the havening touch. When you pair the havening touch, which is very easy to do, and you can self-apply it, which is even better because it's about putting tools in your hands. When you apply the touch, which is like you're washing your hands, a gentle touch of washing your hands, or giving yourself a sweet hug from your shoulders down to your elbows, just that nice stroke, or even on your face, like a nice facial, or pretend like you're putting on moisturizer or lotion. When you use any or three of those touches, there's no choreography, and then you pair it with a positive thought, a pleasant distraction, and that could be anything, by the way, Danielle. That could be counting to 20, singing a song, because that activates the vagus nerve. It could be thinking about a great vacation you took or a cool game, because kids love these games, right? Something that puts them into a situation outside of the upset that they're feeling. What you're doing when you're havening and you're pulling yourself away from the upset or the duress or even the trauma, if you're working with a certified practitioner like myself, you are creating new neural pathways. You are releasing oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. We're talking the happy hormones, right? Oxytocin's the love hormone, serotonin, dopamine, happy hormones. And you are producing more delta waves. Delta waves in your brain are the slowest moving brain waves you have. We are living in a fast moving brainwave state, gamma, alpha. Those are the brainwaves we're living in a lot. We're bringing you down and producing more delta waves. And I mean the havening technique. And when you are producing more of those delta waves, that sleep state brainwave, by the way, you can find a sense of calm. You can create new neural pathways, right? Because you're telling your amygdala, you're safe. I'm in a safe haven. You are also producing less cortisol, your stress hormone, because you're producing more of the oxytocin and the dopamine, the serotonin. So it's really a question of space, right? If you crowd things out of your home that are no longer serving you, and we know this in the ADHD world, I'm not diagnosed, but I feel, and I know you mentioned this before, I do feel that there's an element of the ADHD brain in me. Like if I have clutter in my home, I can't bring more clutter in because there's no more space, right?
Yeah.
But if I crowd things out, I'm creating more space. So imagine that in your brain, crowding out the bad thoughts or the not so positive. We won't call them bad. Crowding out the thoughts that are not serving you to make room for the thoughts that are. Crowding out the cortisol and the adrenaline to make room for more serotonin and oxytocin. Crowding out the gamma and the alpha waves and producing more of the delta, right? You're creating you're creating a haven in your home, which is your mind.
Yeah.
If that is like the easiest way I can put it, I like to think in visuals because I think it helps. But that's the beauty of havening. It is a neuroscience-based approach, right? This isn't woo-woo. This works, and it tends to be rapid. And I think what I've learned is that the doctors, Dr. Ron and Steve, who I adore, and they're mentors in my life, really created an approach that is not about constantly needing your therapist or needing a practitioner, but helping you to put the healing in your hands. Clearly for the deeper rooted, clearly when you need extra support, very important to have a practitioner. But imagine a world where people have their own resilient landscape in their brain and are able to change the narrative. What a world this would be if more people had that.
Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today. Ooh, girl, I feel like you were sent to me. You were purposefully sent to me for a couple of reasons. One, I have been working with a therapist for quite some time on healing my nervous system or calming my nervous system. And we have not been very successful so far. I am learning. But a couple of things that you said in there, when you said havening, pairing it with something pleasant or positive, that really struck me because I have been using havening in a survival mode. For instance, I was told to the hand washing technique that you referenced where you rub your hands together. I was told to do that because if my nervous system recognizes that I have time to rub my hands together, I'm not being chased by the lion, the hypothetical lion.
Right.
Which is a great starting place. But when you said pair it with something positive, I was like, oh, so there are many more levels that I could take this to that would be more beneficial, if that makes sense.
Well, and I have to ask you, are you working with a therapist that actually is certified in havening or somebody that just knows about the approach and learned a little bit in, watching it online on YouTube? Because there's plenty of stuff that we put out there. I applaud those who are in therapeutic work wanting to bring in more holistic approaches and integrate it into their practice. Those are my kind of therapists and doctors and nurses. Many of those I train. Right? I'm training them to use this tool correctly because this is a technique that you have to understand it. It's not just rubbing your hands and rubbing your arms and thinking about anything. There are 7 different fundamental techniques to havening. Does that doctor know how to use them? Do they know that there's the clearing that we have to think about? There's clearing havening. And then there's growth havening, like both sides of the spectrum, meaning are you looking to create a more resilient future? Are you trying to work on getting to the root issue of the past? So having a very clear understanding of what havening is and knowing how and when to utilize different techniques is really important. What you can even find, is that you can do self-havening and affirmational havening, which is one of our techniques anytime. But when you're dealing with deeper rooted, if somebody is not proficient and well-versed in havening, they can actually do more damage than good. And I think I'll put that out there right now. And if you have other people that listen that are therapists, get trained. If you have people that are interested in getting trained, get in touch with Hilary. And this is not a pitch. This is me saying that for me, the most important thing is safety. That's what havening is. It's safety. It's a transitive verb for the word safety.
Yeah.
So if you truly want to learn havening correctly and want to discover how it can be beneficial, find someone who truly understands what havening can do for you.
Yeah. First, I want to say that my therapist is amazing. If he is listening to this, I am not knocking him in any sense. But when you broke it down that way, where you said you can be working on the past, which is kind of the lower level, or working on the future, that may be why we're framing it that way, because I still have so much nervous system healing to do.
Right, right. And we're always going to be doing nervous system regulation till the day we leave this planet, because something always comes up, right? Whether it is the laundry wasn't put away, or, I'll be quite honest, trigger warning here. And maybe some people have been through this, especially if they're living in the North Carolina mountains. I was in a car accident, we'll call it a fender bender, because even words matter. It was car versus buck deer. Never experienced that in my life, all my years on this planet. And I grew up, upstate New York, so lots of deer. But I was in the hills of Virginia, and this guy came out of nowhere. And that was very traumatic.
Yeah.
And while we were okay, I was really guarded for quite some time driving once the sun set, because, rutting season, and they're jumping out of everywhere during rutting season.
Yeah.
So I needed to work on tools to self-regulate and realize, like, I am safe. I'm okay. I'm a good driver. I am looking more at my surroundings. I'm paying more attention. And quite frankly, I'm in a really safe vehicle, so like doing that and picturing the outcome is me getting from point A to point B, knowing that I'm safe, and not white knuckles on the car, worried about, is Bambi going to jump out every 5 minutes, right? So that's a perfect example of things continue to happen. Or maybe it's a bad conversation with someone, or maybe a child struggles with something at school, like bullying or bad homework, hard. Life is hard for kids more than anything. And then you add the attention deficit or the ADHD on top of it. And that can be really difficult to know, why is my brain working like this?
Yeah.
So things are always going to come up where we're challenged, but having tools, and it could be havening, it could be something else. You can put them in your little, I call brain candy jar. Like, I call it brain candy. Everything you have is like brain candy, whether it's journaling, havening, taking a walk, singing, because that's activating the vagus nerve, which I love to do. All those are brain candy. Sometimes you want a chocolate. Sometimes you want a caramel. Like, what is it in that jar that's going to serve you in that moment? So that, and it doesn't give you cavities.
Yeah. So I hope this does not offend you.
Mm-hmm.
I am rather woo-woo. I know that term is offensive to some, but to be practical, how could I teach this to my kid where he's not like, mom's back on her woo-woo stuff?
Well, it's hard to tell a kid this isn't woo-woo, it's neuroscience, because they're going to be like, roll their eyes at you like, I don't really care, right? But for those adults out there listening that are wanting more scientific-based approaches, this isn't woo-woo, it's neuroscience. Yeah. So, but for your younger ones, and I deal with this all the time when I work with kids, because I actually am very fortunate that I have a nonprofit that I work with that offers free mental health to children and their families. And when I have a parent in the room and I try to bring the child in with them, because I want them to kind of have an understanding, even though most of the time they're like, Mom, Dad, leave, I want to talk to Hilary myself. The way that I like to share it is, you are, by doing and showing and using in your own life, you're the mirror, right? A child will pick up on things. But it also is something where you can be like, if they have something they like to do, like, say, how old is your son? How old is your son?
He's 9.
Okay. And what does he like to do?
He likes anything physical and video games. I know that's a very broad
Of
spectrum.
course. So if he has a favorite, and this is a great example. So I have a number of young men I work with, and it's always the video games. Like
Yeah.
that's what they love to. It's that or sports, right? So like sometimes what I'll do is I'll be like, all right, you know what, and I make it exciting for them. And yeah, sometimes they might not want to do this with mom because they're like, really, mom, do I need to tell you about? But if you give them the opportunity to share what's exciting to them, right? Like, what is this game you're talking about? What's the perfect scenario? And maybe they learn the havening. And listen, young boys aren't going to sit there and do the self hug probably because it's like, I don't want to do this. This looks weird. I don't want to caress my face. But I'll tell you this, I work with military and government too, big guys, right? Mainly guys, big wig guys doing big things in the world of the government and military.
Yeah.
And and even first responders, right? Police, whatnot, fire. They're sitting there just rubbing their hands anyway. They don't even realize they're self-soothing when they're doing it. They haven't even been introduced to havening yet. This is a self-soothing approach when you're just sitting there rubbing your hands together and you take your mind somewhere else. So when you're in that moment of something coming up for you, what if your son, are you sharing, do you share your son's name on here? I don't want to ask you.
Not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your son, if you just let him, like, tell him about, like, how he can this is a simple soothing approach, and maybe not using the word soothing, because again, he's going to be like, you're weird, mom.
Yeah.
But if you just show him what you're doing and be like, what is it that's really cool about the game? Like, what is this game we got you? What is it again? Or just remind him he can actually create a cool scenario of putting himself in the game. Or if there's other things that he loves to do, like I have a gentleman I work with that loves sports, and I'll have him do like the perfect lineup of this World Series Game 7 game. And by taking his brain to that place where he's like, this one's on first, that one's on second, and he's not even in it, right? He's just watching the game at the 7th game of the World Series, and he's doing havening in his hands. You're pulling yourself away from things.
Yeah.
So it's just giving him a chance to dive into his world, right? Or count to 20, or, think of things that are going to align with what he likes to do.
Yeah.
It's just, and doing it yourself, like the more he sees you doing the havening touch in his presence, maybe it's more just doing it with your hands, because that's more likely what the kids are going to do.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to look weird. They don't want to not fit in, right? If he wants to do this when he's in his room, that's different. When he's by himself, he might feel more comfortable doing the shoulder to elbow or on his face. Because it does help with sleep too when you do it on the face. Little ones, if you want to practice it on your children, you can actually do the havening touch. You're probably already doing it as a parent if you have little ones that can't go to sleep. You're already caressing them and touching them and showing them that nurturing human touch connection is so important. Touch is so important for survival.
Yeah.
But what if you tell them a bedtime story while you're doing it? Then you can actually do it on them, and you don't even realize you're doing a little havening on them.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. There's so many ways. Giving them tools to empower themselves is what's going to create really well-rounded and well-adjusted young people that turn into young adults, that turn into human beings that hopefully will change this world for the better.
Yes, agreed.
And themselves.
Yes. A couple of things in there, and then I definitely want you to tell the listeners about your program.
Sure.
One, thank you for the reminder to model, and that is the number one way. And the second is, this is a crazy off-the-wall tidbit. I have ADHD, of course, so I cannot sit with unguided meditation. So I have to use a guided meditation every day for the last 6 years. And in that, she says to give yourself a hug or rub your arms skin to skin. And for the longest time, I was like, I'm not doing that. That seems, just like you said, I was like, that seems crazy. I'm not going to sit here in the dark and rub my arms. But now that I have given in, and today, now that I'm recognizing that is havening, it's really nice and calming when I do the last couple of seconds with the affirmations. And now I realize that she has been trying to set me up for a great day, and I have been resisting it.
Right. Yeah. And maybe she doesn't even know it's havening, but
Maybe.
the whole idea is that, and look, some people have they don't want to touch themselves. They don't want to use the touch, rather, we'll put it that way. They don't want to use a touch on skin to skin because maybe they have a sensitivity to that. And I do have clients I work with, and I've talked to many people as well that just in my surroundings that don't like the skin on skin. And you might have somebody that I've worked with that could maybe have had something happen to them where being touched was a negative thing. You can actually use a pillow or some kind of textile. Like I always with my kids, when they come in my room, and I even have it for adults as well, I have a pillow, or I ask them if they want to bring their favorite plushie toy, or a blanket, something that's soothing and warm and comforting and safe to them, so that when they're maybe even sitting on the couch watching cartoons, or doing something in their own safe space, they can do it on the blanket, and maybe that will move from blanket or pillow to just gently doing it on their hands. So you have to do what's right for you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. That's what's so beautiful. It's such a simple technique. Where it could go in a negative direction is if somebody is trying to support you and not choosing, is not really understanding trauma work. Not every therapist or doctor or practitioner or nurse or anyone in the medical field is actually trauma informed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big distinction too, is understanding traumatic encoding, because the other thing about Havening is that it can de-encode trauma when you are working with a professional Havening practitioner. Because for something to actually be encoded as trauma, you have to have an event that happened. There has to be a meaning that you're associating to it. It's the landscape of your brain not knowing, did it happen then? Is it happening now? And then a feeling of inescapability. That's traumatic encoding, right? Everything else could just, there's little T's and big T's that happen, but like really, truly understanding. And then what happens to the body? When you're in the presence of somebody you're supporting, how do you take note of your own somatic, like how are you feeling somatically? How are you feeling autonomically or cognitively or emotionally? Those things you can take note of yourself. Yeah. And then that's where you need, if you realize like I can do this myself, but maybe I need some extra support, that's for you to decide, right? It's always about choice and safety.
Yeah.
Period. That's it. Yeah.
Hilary, I know there are a ton of 80s and 90s babies dying to know how they can work with you. So tell them, if you do not mind, about your programs and any upcoming events that you have.
Sure. So I do this monthly as my gift to the world. And also it's a gift to me. I'm not going to just say it's just for others. I actually benefit from this as well. I have a Havening happy hour that I do every month. I have been doing this since March 2020 when the pandemic happened and people needed connection. This is a monthly event I do online. It's called Havening Happy Hours. And this is an opportunity for you to be in group online. You don't have to share, but people do. They love sharing because being in community is important. But I do a guided Havening experience. I facilitate self-havening, meaning that you learn how to do the self-havening, and then I guide you. And then we have Q&A afterwards, and that's a really beautiful, like, I love doing that, and I don't ever see myself stopping. And every month we pick a theme. I pick a theme, and you can stick to the theme or you can do your own thing. And sometimes people just like a little more guidance, and you can find that on my Havening, my Havening events site, which is just hilaryrusso.com/events. All my events are always there. For anyone that's interested in looking into getting certified or learning more about Havening, I do regular Havening trainings, which is a 2-day training. You find out about the fundamentals of Havening, the neuroscience behind it, the history, and then you practice all 7 different types of Havening so that you understand when each one can be very impactful and effective with either those you're serving or even yourself. And then there's the option to go on for certification and mentorship with me. You have to do the 2-day in order to go on for certification and mentorship. That's the organizational rule for Havening. But I do have one coming up soon. And that is an opportunity. I do still have space for that. So you can find out about that at hilaryrusso.com/training. And of course, there's always an opportunity just to get in touch with me on social media and just connect with me and my podcast, which is Holistically Speaking. And that's Trauma to Triumph Stories through Holistic Health, Healing, and Humor. How you can be a happy and healthy grown-up one day at a time, basically, and be kind to your mind. Yeah, I love doing podcasting. That's 5 years doing this, and it's really just my heart's work.
Yeah. I am like 90 days in, and I cannot believe that this is my job where I get to learn cool things, meet cool people, and it's amazing. I never knew this was possible.
Yeah, it is fun. And listen, when I first got into the world of podcasting, I was resistant at first because that is a whole story in itself, where a friend of mine who is a really, really well-known podcaster and has a whole podcasting network, he's like, why aren't you doing a podcast? You've done everything else in media. And I'm like, really? Do I need one more thing on my plate? And he produced it for the first year or two. And he was already building his own podcast network in the broadcasting, in the Broadway world, rather. And because that's how we know each other from doing professional theater.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. He really helped me put it on the map. And, we're globally top rated. We have some of the best experts in the field that come on our show to talk about different ways to be kind to your mind. And then sometimes I just do solo episodes where I just have conversations with people, my audience, to let them know that I'm here. But every week is like a masterclass. That's how I treat it. Every week I'm learning something from the guests we've had on the show. Yeah. And I hope that those who are tuning in, or if they're watching on YouTube as well, gets one takeaway that they can implement into their lives. It's really what it's about. Like the Hug It Out way, that's my program. And by Hug It Out is in the healing that we're constantly doing in our lives. Yeah. There has to be humor. Humor has to exist. That's the H. We look back at things later and we're like, wow, I really got worked up about that, but I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm safe. There's the understanding, and that's the U. We have to understand who we are and how we're showing up in the world. And then there's the G. It's gratitude. And it's not so much gratitude for things outside of ourselves. It's gratitude for self. What are you grateful for that you are giving to this world? I'm a great mom. I'm showing up for my children. I'm showing up for myself. I'm listening to great podcasts to learn more. I'm trying new techniques. Who are you, and what are you proud of about what you're doing? That's the Hug It Out way. And it also does implement some havening, because it is a hug modality. Yeah. So how are you hugging it out in your everyday? And I do have one other offer I will share with you. I have a Hug It Out 5-day challenge. And that is also something I'm sure you'll share in the podcast notes, which is 5 days just to try something new and hug it out with yourself in the everyday, and then see how you feel after 5 days. It's a download, it's simple, and there's even a little bit of a havening guided video in there that I share.
I love that so much. And yes, we'll put all of that in the show notes.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. I just realized I've asked like 2 questions that was on my list. So thank you for going all over the map with me and coming back.
We love our ADHD brains.
This has been so good. I cannot wait for your upcoming events. And I think I should try the 5-day Hug It Out with my kiddo and see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely a really fun thing to do. And for kids too. I kind of make it more just, it's not as serious. The whole thing is we need to have actionable steps that we can apply to our everyday life to live well, to be well, to know that all is well. Right? Yeah. This is actually part of my book. So I'm kind of releasing a little piece of the book so people can apply the Hug It Out way, and then let me know how it worked for you, because this is going to be all part of Hug It Out. And I am really excited of the journey that we're going on with the Hug It Out method.
That is very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I could do this all day. I would selfishly take up all of your time, but I'm sure you are a very busy lady. So thank you so much for your time today, Hilary.
Thank you, Danielle. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for everything you're doing and all that you are putting out in the world and holding space for others, but more importantly, holding space for yourself.
Thank you. It's the perfect ending. Phew. As we wrap up this enlightening episode of Chaos and Caffeine, a massive thank you to Hilary for gracing us with her wisdom, warmth, and wit, her dedication to holistic healing, and her innovative Hug It Out method. Emphasizing humor, understanding, and gratitude truly offer invaluable tools for parents navigating the ADHD landscape. Remember, amidst the chaos, there's always room for self-compassion and, y'all know me, a good laugh. Until next time, keep embracing the beautiful mess of parenting with a cup of coffee in hand and kindness in your heart. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.